The church in Ayrshire has launched a new Mission Pioneer programme to connect with people in refreshing and dynamic ways. The Presbytery of Irvine and Kilmarnock has formed 6 Pioneer initiative teams. 4 are connected to parish churches and 2 operate across the Presbytery area. Katrona Templeton is Pioneer mission worker for the Reach Out Together Disability Inclusion project, and she and her team are working to ensure that all congregations are more welcoming and accessible.
Irvine and Kilmarnock decided to do some mission pioneering work. So they asked for people to put in projects. So I put in a project for the deaf church and trying to get more deaf people into congregations. And I think there was 3 or 4 projects that all focused on disability. So what the Presbytery decided to do was to join us all together. We came together and we thought what's important. So we decided on a couple of things. One, that we wanted at least 50% of our core group to have some people with disabilities in it, because we feel that a lot of people who work with disabilities is telling people with disabilities, you need this, therefore we'll do it, rather than saying what can we do to help you. We also thought about what was a disability, because a disability is wide ranging. The way we look at it is anybody who has an impairment or a disability where they feel that they can't get the most out of worship on a Sunday. Things or little things that we're finding that are alienating people with disabilities coming into the church. So what we decided to work was a 3-point programme. So the first point is to go out into churches. So we've done an accessibility audit and found out what was referable for churches, which churches had hearing loops, which is 100%, which ones had wheelchair access, which was all but 1, which ones had spatial lettering, who had BSL, sign language interpreters, who had this, who had that. And to be honest with you, we weren't actually looking at the accessibility of the church, we also used it to get the conversation started. We've also asked each church in the Presbytery to put forward what we're calling an inclusion advisor. So we'll work with this team of people and we'll do trainings and we'll support them if they need support, and their job is to go back to the home churches and tell them what's been happening at the trainings. Maybe if they have a member in the congregation who needs extra help and they're not 100% sure what to do, they can come and talk to us and we'll rack our brains and try and find the best ways to help. I think a lot of people might they wouldn't classify it as a disability, but something as simple, if your eyesight's failing, something as simple as bigger lettering. If you are using the screens, maybe I know some churches will have the individual iPads for people to actually see the screens if they can't see the screens. So it's just things like that. It's little things that can help make a lot of difference. The second part is going into the disabled community and actually letting people with disabilities know, hey, we are from the church, but we're not going to start praying for you to get miraculously cured if that's not what you want. If you want us to pray for you, whatever you want, we'll do it. Last year we've done 2 events for inclusion, because we're finding that a lot of families, there's events offered but they're too scared to take their children to these events. So this year we're also doing a treasure trail down the town centre, and we're doing a craft day, and again we're asking the special needs schools first. Let them have the opportunity. If the tickets aren't sold, we're going to ask other people who want to come, because we also don't want to make a barrier around the disabled community. Right? So it's a bit like more, oh, you're disabled, we're going to set up these activities for you and everybody else is welcome to come to the activities that are set up for people with disabilities, rather than your normal, oh, we do this, oh, you're disabled, let us just change this wee bit and changing it for them, but actually having it set up for the disabled community and inviting everybody else into their space. The third part we're looking at is actually setting up separate worship spaces for people with disabilities, because not everybody can sit for an hour in a traditional service. So we want to work with churches. We don't want to take, it's quite a hard thing inclusion, because you do want to make every space inclusive, but say for the deaf church it's a different language level, and if you've done services for that was at the right language level for people who are deaf, the rest of the congregation would probably not enjoy it as much. So have those separate spaces for the worship, and also it means that you've got women's groups in churches, you've got men's groups in churches. If you have a disabled group, the theology and how you feel that God made you disabled, and to be able to have a space to talk about stuff like that. We also found that a lot of people with autistic children, they're fine during Sunday school because the Sunday school adapt, but when it comes to the time where they have to come in church, they can't sit in the church and there's not enough adaptation. So what we're planning is some worship spaces, but also plan some joint services with churches so that we can bring the people from those worship spaces into the main church and have the service, like maybe once a month or once every 2 months, whatever, aimed at the disabled community, and let the rest of the congregation join at the disabled community level. My home church is actually the Ayrshire Mission for the Deaf. I'm autistic myself. I found that out when I was 36, after my second child. So all my life I have been to a traditional church, but sometimes I've just felt, I have trouble sitting for the hour, so I want to fiddle, I want to draw, I want to crochet, and I didn't know why, and it's probably the autism. Also sometimes I find the music, the microphones are a wee bit too loud for me, and when my church joined with this, it was actually this church that joined together, I was taken from quite a smaller congregation into a really big one, and I didn't settle that well, and had been going to the deaf church anyway to practice my sign language, so I thought I might as well just move my lines over there, and I went into the deaf church. But then when my children got bigger, the deaf church doesn't have any other children, and I wanted my children to get a Christian education as well, so I started bringing them to Sunday school here because my parents still worship here. So I've now settled back down here, so I come here in the morning, and when the deaf church is on, go there in the afternoon. And I know what it's like to be part of a church but not feel 100% you belong to it. Like nothing that any of the congregation done, just feeling a wee bit different. And after my autism diagnosis, I actually came more to understand who I was. So I now have earplugs, so in the middle of the service, if it's getting too much, I'll put my earplugs in, and I wouldn't have done that before because I think, people will be staring at me. Or I do carry my crochet with me, and sometimes I'm quite happy here. Sometimes if I've had a bad day, or if the kids have been up all night, my resistance is a wee bit lower, and I'll sit and crochet while the minister's talking, and the crocheting just calms me down, and it allows me to actually sit during the service. So when this post came up, I thought I might as well apply and see, because I feel like I know what it's like to be a person with a disability in a church, and even though I spent most of my life not knowing that I had a disability, I know I can see both sides of the stories, and the church is a great place. The church has a lot to offer people with disabilities, just as people with disabilities have got a lot to offer the church. And I think you get 1 or 2 odd people who might spoil it for the rest, but if you're somebody who's vulnerable or not feeling at home in the church and somebody says the wrong thing, that could just spoil the whole thing. So, and I think that the church doesn't know, some people in the church don't know what they're doing when it comes to people with disabilities. So even simple things like somebody in a wheelchair talking to the carer, not the person in the wheelchair, standing above the person in the wheelchair and talking down to them instead of getting onto the right. It's simple things that can make churches a lot more inclusive. And I thought this is a good opportunity for me to try and get that message out.
Jesus said, "I've come that you might have life in all its fullness." And really, as a group, as a Reach Out Together group, we are there to show everyone, disabled people and their families, that God is here for them, that He loves them too, and that not only that, but they can be part of a worshipping, witnessing community in a very real way.
The Presbytery of Irvine and Kilmarnock are at the forefront of mission pioneers, and it's not about us expecting bums on seats. It's about going out into the community and working where the people are at. Yeah, it's really exciting, and it is definitely the way ahead. I hope that the example of what we are doing, that it will be shared wider in the Church of Scotland, so that they can see how valuable it has been.